You can tap in weekly. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, or you can go to selfcaremattersdaily.com and you can find the link there, okay? If something speaks to you, make sure you share it with a friend or leave us a review in the comments. So it's time for our positive spotlight segment of the weekly reset. All right, y'all know I'm going to leave y'all with something uplifting. That's just how I do. Anybody who ever used to watch my first show called What's Going On, you'll remember that I used to have segments where I used to promote a Black-owned business or something positive that, you know, we had going on somewhere in one of our communities, right? So that's what we're going to kind of bring back. And the first one that I'm going to bring back, or the first thing that I'm going to talk about in this segment, is the Podcast Summit 2025. Okay, now if you're a podcaster, you definitely have had to heard of the Podcast Summit. All right, if you haven't, then I'll give you a little bit of information, and then you're going to have to go seek the rest of the information on your own and possibly attend Podcast Summit 2026 because they are doing it again. Now, how many people have heard of Social Proof Podcast, the Social Proof Podcast with David Shands and Donnie Wiggins? If you watch my channel, then you know that I have talked about them before. They are business coaches, okay? But they are not your regular business coaches, in my opinion. In my opinion, they are very authentic. They give good advice. And we actually, if you've been following them for the last 5 years or so, you actually can watch them put into practice the things that they are teaching as they were going along. So I think that's interesting as well. So what we're going to talk about today, though, is they just recently had another podcast summit. All right, I went in person to Podcast Summit 2024. It was an amazing event. They had wonderful vendors and the networking was on point. All right, I feel like that is the highlight of what they're doing. It's not even about the speakers that they have or them being on stage, right? Because everybody wants to meet them. It's not about that, though. It's about the other people who are attending the conference, because these are all people who are podcasters. So the amount of networking that could go on is crazy, right? There's hella interviews to be had. There's hella people to meet that you might be able to collaborate with that can help you get to the next level or whatever the case may be. Because if you watch the Social Proof podcast and you watch Donnie and you watch Dave, you will see a lot of other entrepreneurs that they all cross paths. Earn Your Leisure, okay? Nehemiah Davis, all right? The list goes on. They all kind of rocked in the same circle and they came up together, all right? So that's the whole point of the networking thing when you do go in person. Like, it's nothing like the going in person. Now, last year, they had a swag bag and it had like a Black-owned product in it that I thought was really cool. It was one of those water cups, but it was one that you can take around with you. I can't remember the name of it. The company name was Supplement, but I thought that was good that they had that. This year it looked like it was even better. Now, I attended virtually this year, but I will say that even though I attended virtually, I still got to network with other people who were also attending virtually. I got to see a lot of people who were there at Podcast Summit 2024 that were also at Podcast 2025. And I really just have a few things to say about it. If you were ever thinking about going, or if you have never heard of it before, all right, I had to write my notes down because it was really good. It was a well put together event. All right, it was not just the presenters presenting. It was sort of interactive in the way that they put this together, right? They did have people who were presenting, but there were conversations stuck in throughout, right? KevOnStage, and if you guys watch Beyond the Gates, you know Ernestine Morrison, who plays Shanice. She is the wife of, I think his name is Jay Morrison. Anyway, he's also, kind of been on Social Proof Network and things like that. But Ernestine Morrison is on Beyond the Gates, and she is Shanice, the nurse, and she was there to interview KevOnStage. KevOnStage was a great conversation because he talked about authenticity, and that is what a lot of people are missing these days. They want everything to be perfect and pristine, no mistakes and this and that, and he talked about just being yourself, just being authentic, and I thought that was good. Jason Lee also talked about authenticity. If you know who Jason Lee is, surprised to see him at Podcast Summit. I don't think he even really knew he was at Podcast Summit, but he knew he was coming in to talk to Pastor Jamal Bryant, all right? Because Pastor Jamal Bryant was there, all right? Of course, they can't come to do something in Atlanta and not have the pastor, come through. But he basically filmed his episode for his podcast there with Jason Lee. So when you see that episode, that was at Podcast Summit, all right? But he also talked about authenticity, okay? But my point is the value wasn't just in the information, okay? The information was good. Now another thing I do realize too is that everybody's coming on different levels. So the information that you resonate with may not be the same as somebody else's, right? I felt like all of the information was really good, but if you are just starting and you might have really gotten a lot more out of it because you just didn't know anything or whatever. But the value just wasn't just in the information, all right? It was in the networking, meeting other podcasters and exchanging ideas, and then I don't know, it's just something about that is what's the word? It's something about that makes the event that much greater. Yeah, it's great to see all those people talk, but like I said, last year when I went, I met so many different podcasters and people that kind of open up doors to do other things. And so this year I met some people as well virtually. So I highly recommend. All right, but I'm gonna give you some of my takeaways that I had. One of them obviously is be authentic, be your authentic self. All right, authenticity always wins. KevOnStage and Jason Lee said that. Donnie Wiggins made a point about who are you talking to? When you're doing your content, who are you talking to? Have clarity, all right, in your content. Know who you're talking to, all right? And then the other overall thing that I will say that I took away, because I'm not going to give any specific apps they suggested. There was also an AI portion that was very, very, very informative. All right, what I'm saying is I'm not giving away the information that was valuable inside the Podcast Summit, because you got to go to a Podcast Summit. All right, and this is not a sponsored message, but a shout out to them. But you have to go. I'm just telling you some takeaways that don't involve the things that you should have been there in person for. Because listen, like I said, that AI piece was key. Okay. If you don't know, you need to get onto AI and start learning it. Even if you're not going to use it, you need to start learning it. All right. But anyway, the last thing is the only thing in your way is you. And that might sound cliche, but it's very true. All right. If you are stopping yourself from moving forward, you got to stop. All right. Most people don't act, and that is stopping yourself from moving forward. A lot of people think they're doing something. They think they're in the midst of trying to do something or doing something when they're actually just sitting there looking. They're still on the sidelines. You have to get off the sidelines and actually get in the game. It's not about being perfect. It's not about any of that. Like, think about your iPhone. The iPhone still isn't perfect, but think about how many versions we've had since the first iPhone came out. Okay. The first version of the iPhone, at this point, we would say it completely sucked, right? But like, look how many things they put out, regardless of whether it was perfect, and people still line up to buy it. So my point is, you have to act. Stop waiting. Stop procrastinating. Stop all that. All right. That is my takeaway. No matter what it is, whether it's self-care, whether it's diet, whether it's working out, whether it's a new hobby, a new job, a new skill, it doesn't matter. All right. Get off the sidelines. Actually act and do it. All right.